Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed for the VFA Pioneer Histories Project. Can you just start by telling us your name and where and when and where you were born?
Karen Boehning, I'm delighted to be here with you all. I think what you're doing is fantastic and important, and it took quite a few years to get it cooking along here, and I'm so glad that we're at this stage now.
When and where were you born?
Aha, in 1945.
Good year. Hmm.
Yes, right.
Were you
um,
born in Chicago?
Here in
Or,
Chicago, right.
and what was your family life like growing up? What kind of ethnic background? And
Pretty
yeah.
much German
Uh huh.
and uh, pretty working class and middle class, and nothing very exciting or unusual. And we lived in ethnic neighborhoods on the north side of Chicago, and my my parents met during the war, and my father was a pharmacist, and my mother worked in the insurance industry, which she continued to work in for her entire life. My grandmother was a waitress. My grandfather was a barber.
Great. Okay.
Pretty much, just your American mix there.
So you've already told us how you got involved in the women's movement, and you went to your first Now meeting. You called Nan Wood and heard that great story. And
Yes,
so tell us a little bit about your experience working in Now. I know you pretty much were all in from the minute you joined, and the
yes,
minute you found Now. So
yes.
tell us what you can
Well, I
remember about your
found
experience there.
a group of women who were just, mind-bogglingly brilliant and brave. And I was just, absolutely fascinated by all this. I had never met any women who were as brave and courageous and determined as these women. And one of them was Mary Jean Collins, and one of them was Mary Ann Lupa, and then a little later on I met you. And the longer I was in, the more fascinated I became by where have all these women been? We don't see them on television. We don't read about them in the newspapers too much. Just when we do something goofy, they'll be all over it. And so I was completely all in. I mean, I think it took me 2 weeks to decide that I was a lifelong feminist and that I was going to do everything I possibly could to advance the cause. And I was so grateful for finally having an opportunity to express my long-standing frustration and disappointment with the status of women. I mean, it was basically horrible. I mean, we're talking the late 60s, early 70s. I mean, come on, we could barely go to the store alone unescorted, I mean. So it was kind of a big learning curve, and you had to, of course, then keep helping yourself adjust to the new realities and the new options in life. I mean, who had these kind of options before?
Right, right.
So,
So you mentioned that you liked protesting.
yes, I did. I liked standing. Well, I think I was born that way. My mother says, "Well, I'm not surprised. When you didn't like something, you made it perfectly clear that you didn't like it." And I thought, well, to myself. I said, this is a good thing. I'm not upsetting anybody, and I'm expressing myself. So this has to be a good thing.
So did you
And
like being out on the street and handing out flyers and posters and marching and all of that?
yeah, and talking to people. I mean, I would get into conversations with people on street corners. My favorite place to do this was where Marshall Fields was on State and Randolph, and
Right,
I
right.
was always chit chatting with the ladies over there. And and in the beginning, before the women's movement was more accepted, I suppose that's a relative term. Uh, you could get yourself into a lot of trouble by talking about this stuff, and but I think that I found my place and my comfort level very quickly on, and I met some wonderful women who were like-minded, and so off we went into the great unknown, and it
Literally,
was
yeah.
the great unknown, and but I loved every minute of it, and I knew that this was the right thing to be doing. I knew that I had found what I wanted to be doing, which was standing up for women.
And do you feel like it changed your life?
Absolutely. Now, who's the famous quote? Is that Betty Friedan who says it changed my life? It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Some of the people we've interviewed have said, the women's movement saved my life.
Saved
My life.
Yes.
And I think
that's a very
a lot of women
that's a
felt like
tried and
they
true.
didn't really know,
Yeah.
what they could be. So
Mhm.
you're a natural leader, and you became president of the Chicago Now chapter really quickly. Like what,
Well,
maybe a year
yeah,
after you
after
joined or so?
tutelage under Mary Jean and Mary Ann, I mean, I was like a little baby compared to both of them had already been through race discrimination demonstrations and were very astute about the complexity of these matters, and they had experience, and they just would like lead a group of people out there. All right, we're gonna go and we're gonna march and we're gonna get this straightened out today, and that's it. And I would just okay, fine, let's go. I mean, I didn't even question it.
But then, after a pretty short period of time, you were the one leading it. You
Well,
were, you were
I
inspiring
was
other people. To
yeah,
get involved.
I realized that was the engine of the women's movement, was the enthusiasm and the courage to go out there and put yourself on the line for your cause.
Yeah.
And ours was not the first cause that had learned that lesson. So we had a lot of we had a lot of examples of people who had been, courageous enough to go out there and state their case and had made change as a result of stating their case. And so we were like, okay, let's do that.
One of your big issues was the Equal Rights Amendment.
Oh, yeah. Well, I had to be tutored. I had never heard, and I considered myself fairly well informed and well read politically, and I had never even heard of the Equal Rights Amendment.
I think most of us hadn't. Yeah.
And so that became my cause célèbre. After the image of women in the on television and in the media and whatever. I mean, that was my whole thing. It's like the way they make us look is half the problem. And so I think that once that all got squared away in my head, we were off and running. And then, of course, I was fortunate enough to land in a chapter that had fantastic leadership. Both Mary Jean and Mary Ann were, leaders, and they, every day they were coming up with something that had to be done and had to be taken care of, or a letter had to be written, or somebody had to be called, and, so I was never bored. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the Virginia Slims campaign? What was it?
Yeah. So. That was slimmer than the fat cigarettes men smoke. That was their advertising. It was stupid.
Yeah, exactly. So here it is 2019 and there's still no Equal Rights Amendment. How do you feel about that?
It's totally outrageous and inappropriate, and I don't know how in the hell they're getting away with this. And everyone that I've ever run into in the women's movement has done their level best to get the thing passed, and been very clever and courageous, and making every effort possible, and nothing seemed to work. And you just wonder, what in the hell is that strong that you can stop something that simple from becoming law?
Yeah.
I mean, this was not rocket science.
Yeah, no.
It was not complicated. And I never really did understand it. And I think that's part of what, they just kind of wore us down. I mean, that's really what happened. is, we tried everything.
Well, it became such a political football in a lot of the states,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
particularly Illinois. Yeah. So I understand you have quite a collection. Do you want to talk a little bit about your
Yes,
collection?
I have a collection of a lot of different stuff. Some artifacts, papers, documents, artwork, and it's a voluminous collection. And my hope and dream is that I'm going to find somewhere to display it or get it together and put it on the road and take it around the country to use it as an educational tool, because I think lots and lots of women don't realize how long women have been fighting for equality. Yeah, I really I kind of stay away from it because I get all worked up when I start working on the collection. I get all worked up and I want to go out and demonstrate.
Back
I
into the
want to.
protest
All
mode.
right, let's take a look at this. And I really I have to kind of keep myself calm down because what good is that? We've been through it all. We've gone out there and we've expressed ourselves in great numbers, and we're still without constitutional equality.
No,
It's
true.
like, what is this? And this is the 21st century. I don't get it. I don't get it. And I know that I'm not stupid, and I know most of the people that I know are not stupid, and everybody I know agrees that we should have an equal rights amendment, and I just don't get why we don't. And
Yeah.
the truth is, what is the problem? I almost said effing problem,
Right.
but I didn't want to go there.
But it did pass here in Illinois finally after
Yes.
40 years, so maybe there's hope. Anything else that you want to talk about from your women's movement experience that we haven't covered?
And I'm very still hopeful.
Good.
I don't feel that being up against all the resistance has lessened my resolve or my commitment or my desire to keep working.
That's great.
I mean, I think the Equal Rights Amendment is fundamental to the cause. Without that, we won't have finished
Right.
the job.
No.
So no matter how many things we get accomplished, without that full equality under the Constitution, I just don't think we're...
It's too easy to take other stuff away if you don't have it.
Yeah.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Appreciate
you
making
for
your
the
story be
effort
part of
and
history.
reaching out. I'm just thrilled, and it's re-inspires me to say, okay, I got to get back on the road here, and
Great.
finish it up.
Yep.
Let's get it done.
Get it done.